You know, I've been around a long time, long enough to learn that most secrets don't stay buried forever. Sooner or later, somebody talks, somebody slips up, somebody tells the truth. But every now and then, a story comes along that refuses to give answers. And this is one of those stories. More than 50 years have passed, and nobody knows exactly what happened. Not the FBI, not the police, not even the people who were there. Now, I've heard a lot of strange stories in my lifetime, but this one still gives me chills. It's the story of a man named D.B. Cooper, or at least, that's the name the world remembers. It all happened on November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. Back then, airport security wasn't anything like it is today. People walked through airports without much attention, no metal detectors, no long security lines, a different world. And on that afternoon, a man walked into Portland International Airport. Nothing about him seemed unusual. He looked like an ordinary businessman, middle-aged, neatly dressed, dark suit, white shirt, black tie. In one hand, he carried a simple briefcase, the kind thousands of men carried every day. Nobody gave him a second look, and that was exactly what he wanted. He walked to the ticket counter and purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle. The ticket cost $20. The name he gave was Dan Cooper at the time. It meant absolutely nothing. But before the night was over, that name would become famous around the world. Cooper boarded Northwest Orient Flight 305. It was a short flight, less than an hour. The passengers settled into their seats. Some read newspapers, some stared out the windows, others were already thinking about Thanksgiving dinner. Nobody sensed any danger. Nobody had any reason to. A few minutes after takeoff, Cooper quietly called over a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. He handed her a folded piece of paper. Florence glanced at it and smiled. She thought it was a phone number. Back then, that sort of thing happened all the time, without reading it. She slipped it into her pocket, but then Cooper leaned toward her. His voice was calm, almost friendly, and he quietly said, "Miss, you'd better read that note." Florence pulled the paper back out and unfolded it. The moment she read it, her heart nearly stopped. The note contained only a few words. "I have a bomb. Just imagine that for a second. You're thousands of feet above the ground, locked inside an airplane, and a complete stranger calmly tells you he has a bomb. Most people would panic. Most people would raise their voice. Most people would make a scene. But not Cooper. He sat there quietly, calm as could be, as if he had already planned every second of what was about to happen. Florence tried to stay composed. Her hands were shaking. She asked him if he was serious. Cooper slowly opened his briefcase. Inside, she saw what appeared to be explosives, wires, cylinders, red sticks bundled together. Whether it was a real bomb or not, she wasn't about to take the chance, and neither was anyone else. Then Cooper told her exactly what he wanted. $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting when the plane landed in Seattle. If his demands were met, nobody would get hurt if they weren't. The consequences could be deadly. Now here's the strange part. He wasn't acting like a desperate criminal. He wasn't sweating. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't angry. According to witnesses, he remained polite throughout the entire hijacking, almost as if this was just another business transaction. And that calm behavior made him even more frightening, because it suggested one thing. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime. This man had planned everything, every detail, every step. And what happened next would make this case one of the greatest mysteries in American history. The flight crew wasted no time. As quietly as possible, they informed the pilots. The pilots contacted authorities on the ground, and within minutes, the FBI was involved. But here's what makes this story so unbelievable. Most of the passengers had no idea what was happening, while one of the most daring hijackings in American history was unfolding. People were reading magazines, looking out the windows, thinking about Thanksgiving, completely unaware of the danger sitting just a few rows away. Meanwhile, authorities scrambled to meet Cooper's demands. They didn't want to take chances, not with dozens of innocent lives on board. So they agreed. The money was gathered, $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes were located, a fuel truck was prepared, everything Cooper had asked for. As Flight 305 circled in the air waiting, the tension continued to grow. Everyone on the ground wanted the same thing: get the passengers off that airplane safely. Finally, the plane landed in Seattle. Law enforcement stayed back. No dramatic raid, no shootout, no attempt to rush the aircraft. The risk was simply too great. The money was delivered. The parachutes were delivered. And one by one, the passengers were allowed to leave. Imagine that. Many of them walked off the plane without fully realizing they had just survived a hijacking. For them, the nightmare was over. But for D.B. Cooper, the real plan was only beginning. With the passengers gone, only the flight crew remained. Cooper now had the cash, he had the parachutes, and he had complete control of the situation. Then he gave the pilots a new set of instructions. He wanted the aircraft back in the air. Immediately. The crew was surprised. Most hijackers wanted escape vehicles, hostages, safe passage. But Cooper wanted something entirely different. He wanted to fly south, into the night. And that's when investigators would later realize something important. This man knew a lot about airplanes, more than an average passenger ever should. He instructed the pilots to fly at a specific altitude, a specific speed, under very specific conditions. The kind of details only someone familiar with aviation would likely know. That raised a disturbing question. Who exactly was this man? A military pilot, a former paratrooper, an aviation expert? Nobody knew. And more than 50 years later, nobody knows for certain. As darkness covered the Pacific Northwest, the plane took off once again. This time, there were only a handful of people on board. The crew up front, and D.B. Cooper in the back, outside. The weather was terrible. Rain pounded against the aircraft. Strong winds swept across the sky. Below them stretched endless forests, mountains, rivers, miles and miles of wilderness. If someone disappeared out there, finding them would be nearly impossible. And somehow, Cooper seemed perfectly comfortable with that. As the aircraft continued south, something unusual happened. A warning light suddenly appeared inside the cockpit. It indicated movement near the rear stairway. Then the pilots felt a strange shift, almost like a change in weight. A moment later, they noticed a slight change in air pressure. Something was happening behind them. The crew tried contacting Cooper. No response. They called again. Still nothing. The cockpit remained silent. And then, somewhere in the darkness, D.B. Cooper made his move. A move that would transform him from a criminal into a legend. Because what happened next has puzzled investigators for more than half a century. Somewhere over the dark wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, D.B. Cooper disappeared. Investigators believe he strapped on a parachute, secured the bag of cash to his body, opened the rear stairway, and jumped into the storm. at night, in heavy rain over miles of forest. Just think about that for a moment. Most experienced skydivers wouldn't willingly make a jump under those conditions. The darkness alone was dangerous. The weather made it even worse. And below him, there were no city lights, no roads, no safe landing zones, just wilderness. If Cooper survived that jump, it would have taken incredible skill. If he didn't survive, his body should have been found. But that's where the mystery begins. Because nobody saw him jump. Nobody saw him land, and nobody ever found him. When the aircraft finally landed safely, authorities moved fast. The FBI launched one of the largest investigations in its history. Search teams spread across the region. Helicopters scanned the forests. Agents searched rivers, mountains, and remote wilderness areas, day after day, week after week. The search continued. But there was one problem. There was no trace of Cooper. No body, no parachute, no equipment, no clothing, nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Years passed. Then something happened that shocked investigators all over again. In 1980, nearly 9 years after the hijacking, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was spending the day with his family near the Columbia River. While playing in the sand, he noticed something unusual. Several bundles of old cash buried near the riverbank. The bills were badly damaged, weathered by time, but when investigators examined them, the serial numbers matched the ransom money given to D.B. Cooper. There was no doubt. The money belonged to him. Suddenly the mystery became even stranger. How did the cash end up there? Did Cooper bury it himself? Did floodwaters carry it downstream? Was it evidence that he died nearby? Or was someone trying to send a message years later? No one could answer those questions. And to this day, no one can. Over the years, the FBI investigated hundreds of suspects. Some were former military men. Some had aviation experience. Others were reported by friends or family members who believed they recognized Cooper in the famous sketch. Again and again, investigators thought they might finally have the answer, and again and again. The evidence fell apart. Every lead ended the same way, a dead end. One suspect became especially famous, a man named Richard McCoy. Just months after the Cooper hijacking, McCoy carried out a very similar crime. Many people believed he had to be Cooper. The similarities were hard to ignore, but after years of investigation, authorities concluded he wasn't the man they were looking for. Other suspects came and went. None could be proven, none could be confirmed. And so the mystery survived. In 2016, after decades of investigation, the FBI announced it was scaling back active work on the case. The agency wanted to focus resources on newer investigations, but they never solved the mystery, not officially. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. Most crimes have endings. Most mysteries eventually reveal their secrets. This one never did. A man boarded a plane under a false name, hijacked an aircraft, collected $200,000, released every passenger unharmed, then jumped into a stormy night and disappeared forever. No confirmed identity, no final confession, no body, no answers, just questions. Now I've spent a lot of years on this earth, and I've learned something about mysteries. Sometimes the truth is hiding in plain sight. Sometimes it's buried so deep that nobody ever finds it. Maybe D.B. Cooper died the night he jumped. Maybe his remains are still somewhere in those forests. Maybe he survived, started a new life, and carried that secret to his grave. Or maybe, just maybe, someone out there knows exactly what happened. A family member, an old friend, a person who heard a confession and never spoke a word. We'll probably never know. But that's exactly why people still talk about D.B. Cooper after all these years. Because the story has something most mysteries eventually lose, an ending. Nobody knows how it ends, and maybe nobody ever will. That's the story of D.B. Cooper, one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. And after more than 50 years, it's still waiting for an answer.